Thanks for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. And I am Elissia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to wellness. I'm so excited to share with you the interview for today. I am interviewing one of my heroes. I don't know if I just made that up. She's one of my peers who's a hero. Today we'll be talking to Dominique Barnes-Walker, who is a licensed social worker and individual, couple, and family therapist. She works with a wide variety of individuals in therapy, but loves working with people of color. She endorses several other skills within the field. And as a research assistant, she focuses on engaging in Black families in therapy. She has been my hero since the day we officially met a few years back. I spoke to her about her research when I was thinking about launching the Research Her podcast. And I was so excited about the fact that she was doing research about the strong Black woman complex, because I'm like, I could interview her for the show. It is so closely related to the mental and emotional well-being for many of us. And she has been such a bright person in my life. She grew up in Chicago and is a first-generation college student. She attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, ILL. I ain't hear you. Yeah. Get it together, where she obtained her bachelor's degree in social work, then continued on to earn her Master of Social Work. She is currently a Ph.D. candidate at Adler University, and her dissertation topic is titled The Impact of Strong Black Woman Stereotype on Romantic Relationships. So let me put you in conversation with Dominique and Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Did you always know that you would get into social work and psychotherapy?
No, not at all. I started off in teaching. I was studying elementary education, and I really thought I was going to be a teacher, which in hindsight, I'm trying to be a professor, but I didn't want to be an elementary school teacher. Like once I got in the classroom and stuff, once I started talking to some of the kids, I was like, you know how kids are, they'll share with you their whole life, like right off the bat. So once I started like doing one-on-one tutoring sessions with kids and stuff, and I started talking to them more, I liked the one-on-one face-to-face aspect of it, but deeper. I'm like always wanting to like talk more with them about their lives and things like that. So I was like, I think I want to do therapy.
I'm assuming that was in undergrad. So were there any other undergrad experiences that really like shifted your gears so that you were going more into the social work realm?
I volunteer a lot of agencies that was around social work, and not even just therapy, just more so like case management, just helping people in the realm of like in several different aspects of their lives. And that's when I knew that I wanted to like definitely shift my focus on like helping people in a different way.
At what point did you decide that you were going to pursue a PhD?
Ooh. So then here's another thing. So once I got into my master's program, master's of social work, I was interning at the courthouse. And then I started I'm a mediator as well. So I started doing mediation for parents, people who are getting a divorce or separated. And I really loved it. And I thought I wanted to go into law. I was making parenting agreements for people. And then, like I said, I was interning at the courthouse. And I really thought, I was like, I think I want to go to law school. So I was studying for the LSAT. I think it was like a week before the LSAT. I really just had to like sit down and think, okay, so what do I want to do with this law degree? And I was going to do family law. And I was like, really what I'd be doing in there is extra, basically talking to people about their lives. I'd be doing therapy and not really the legal part of it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to go get a PhD. And I had one class in my master's program was called family therapy. And we actually got a chance to, they had like a clinic at the School of Social Work at U of I, and we were able to see couples under supervision of a licensed social worker. But then that's when I learned, okay, yes, I really want to do this. This is what I want to do. I do not want to go to law school. Like a week before the LSAT, I was like, nope, not going to do this. I had to go take the GRE. Never study for the GRE again. I was studying for the LSAT for a whole year. Took the GRE, luckily did decent. I guess some of the stuff transferred over. And I just started applying to PhD schools. And this was in November, December. All the applications were due that January. So I had like 2 weeks to change my personal statement to completely switch to family therapy. And that's when I was like, I'm going to do a PhD. And that's how that story changed. So I went from teaching elementary school to therapy. Then I was like, I want to law school. And I was like, nope. And now I'm in PhD. And I'm like, I don't regret the decision at all. I'm so happy I did not go to law school. So happy.
And how did you know you wanted a PhD versus getting another doctorate?
My PhD program is clinical too. So I know I wanted to stay clinically active. I wanted to do research. And U of I is a R1 institution. They really press research a lot. And I actually started to learn more about research, and I really like doing it. So that's what made me decide to do PhD, because PhD is more research focused. And once I found what I like to research, it was a given. It wasn't like, because, for some people dread the PhD because they don't want to do the research. But I like that part about it. That's why I chose to do that.
Talk a little bit more about like your transition from your master's program to your PhD. So, in that transition from one to the other, did you already go into the program knowing like this is my topic, this is what I want to get into, or was it more of a struggle?
Like you, I always say, like, I've been to school my whole life. So it really wasn't transition. It was like a summer break,
Mm-hmm.
really. And I started right up. And I knew I wanted to do research on Black people because I always feel like that's important for me to give back to my community, to be able to like provide some type of resource for the community. I didn't know the topic at first. One of my good friends, and she's in my cohort, her name is Sherry. We were working on this other research about Black families and therapy, and she sent me these articles. They were random. It really didn't have nothing to do with our other research that we were doing. It was about the strong Black woman stereotype, and I had never heard of it ever. But you hear people always calling Black women strong and all, like, just all these things. And actually, in class one day, this white girl asked me, "How do you feel about being called strong all the time? Like, what do you think about that?" And I was like, "Wow." And I just read this article about it. I was like, "This is what I'm going to study." And once I learned more about the strong Black woman stereotype, that's when I was like, okay, of course there has been research done, but I had to figure out like what I was truly passionate about. And of course, I work with a lot of couples in a lot of families, so I wanted to figure out, like, do more research on the relational part of the strong Black woman stereotypes. So I'm out looking at the impact of stereotype across relationships. That is how I chose.
What is really the strong Black woman stereotype? Is it like called construct or syndrome, or is it just like strong Black woman stereotype?
Yeah. So here's the thing about like Black literature and research. Our research is being more accepted
Hmm.
in publications. There was no one word for it. It was called a construct, icon, ideal, a archetype, a discourse, a mass, all these different ways that people classify. And even like you said, syndrome, I call it a stereotype, and a lot of people do. It's because if you look at the basic definition of a stereotype, it's just like a fixed pattern or construct or mental or physical representation of a group of people. I feel like the word stereotype is all encompassing of what several of those overlapping constructs that people call it, because people have called it sojourner truth syndrome and several other things, and they all really mean the same thing.
So, what are the stereotypes?
The creation of the strong Black woman stereotype is based off overlapping constructs of internalized racism, sexism, and oppression dating back to slavery. And the basis of the strong Black woman stereotype is someone who possesses strength. We talk about our grandmothers and our mothers. We always say, like, they're so strong. I wish I could be as strong as they are. And the idea of being strong is the basic construct underlying meaning of the strong Black woman stereotype. But the strong Black woman is defined as someone who is very, very independent. She is resistant to like any vulnerability or being emotional. And part of her duty and responsibility is to take care of her family and to take care of her community. She's selfless, so she'll put herself on the back burner to make sure her people are good, to make sure her family is good. She's a provider. The strong Black woman is expected to exceed no matter what. With limited resources, if you have nothing, you'll make something out of it. The strong Black woman definitely detaches from her emotions and hones in on the fact that we are further strengthened through our struggles.
What are the symptoms of the strong Black woman stereotype?
Medically, the impact of being stressed out and not being able to release that stress causes a lot of other medical issues, but also just emotional health and emotional well-being is very for Black women is very bad. A lot of Black women, they'll take on a lot of responsibilities although they know that they can't afford to put that on their plate. That's the way that looks sometimes. Or a strong Black woman who endorses stereotype will not understand or know what's happening, being on a lot of stress and pressure from everyone around you to just put on this facade of, okay, I'm good, I don't need anything, I'm not even expecting anything from anybody else. When all those things come together, sometimes they do crash. And that really does weigh heavily on the strong Black woman's self esteem and confidence. To be called strong and to be called a strong Black woman, that's like a badge of honor for a lot of Black women. You know, if you present anything else outside of that, the research shows a lot of Black women will like actually talk to the other Black, like, you know, say things like, wow, you couldn't even do those like 5 things. So it's a lot of relational aspects of internalizing the strong Black woman stereotype that impact your relationship with your family, people who are close to you, even at work, at school. There's an expectation that Black women will just see no matter what, whatever they're presented with.
Mm-hmm. I saw that it can be transmitted. The term transmitted was used. I thought that was kind of funny, but like,
Yeah.
how is it transmitted?
So it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever heard like transgenerational trauma or the characteristics of a strong Black woman started back from slavery. There's like several big stereotypes called the Mammy, the Jezebel, and the Sapphire. Being strong was a means of survival for Black women. There was no choice. Black women were raped in slavery and they had no choice but to be strong and to present as strong. If not, Black women would break down and cry when her kid is being taken away from her or like try to like do something other than being strong before being raped. They would risk being separated from their families and from their children. So that's how, when people describe it as being transmitted, is learned behavior. And you know how the saying goes, like Black women raise their daughters and their sons differently. They raise their daughters to make sure that they're strong and make sure they're independent and make sure they're internalizing the fact that they need to depend on anyone else, and especially not a man, to take care of them. When they say that it's transmitted, it's like learned behavior from your ancestors. It's not intentional. So I catch myself sometimes doing it with my dog. Like I gotta take a step back and be like, no, I can't keep doing this cycle of, oh, you just got going. You got to keep pressing.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned that it affects the health too. So that's also supported. Is that
Yeah.
that as a result to this stereotype, women's health are literally at risk.
Definitely is impacted deeply. You know, Black women with heart disease, being overweight. A lot of Black women who endorses the stereotypes of being a mammy and things like that. They struggle with eating disorders. There's definitely so many ways in which their physical health is impacted.
Are there any other themes that we haven't discussed that occur as a result of the strong Black woman stereotype?
I think it's really important to really stress the fact that there's two different sides to, you know, endorsing the strong Black woman stereotype. That yes, it is something that has been seen as very positive for our community, but that Black women are able to be these amazing beings despite of our history of slavery, our history of negative stereotypes against us, all of these things that are all encompassing of the reason why we present and want to present as opposite of those things. That is amazing and great. However, on the flip side is that it's okay to not have to be the strong Black woman. If you're struggling and you know that you don't need to add anything else on your plate, and you know you can't take another responsibility, then it's important for you to take a step back and put yourself first. It's important to look out for your family and help your community, but that stuff is draining. It really does impact your mental health. and your physical health. It's important for us as Black women to kind of be very aware of trying to be too independent, trying to be too much of a caretaker, sacrificing our own needs and wants for the benefit in which we think is the benefit of others. And sometimes it's not even necessarily that. And so it's always good to take a step back and be like, I love being strong, I love being independent, but I'm gonna need some help. I need help or I need support, and to like let people know how to support you. That's very important.
Your thesis is pretty much about how does the strong Black woman stereotype affect romantic relationships. Do you have any
Yes.
preliminary data? Do you have any preliminary data that you can share with us?
Okay. The study that I'm doing, like literally hasn't been any study like it. And what I'm looking at is different characteristics of the strong Black woman and if those could predict relationship satisfaction. However, there has been a few qualitative interviews that discuss what Black women think of being in a relationship and their expectations and their roles and things like that. I could think about a couple interviews where Black women have said, I've been married for so long and I realized that I never had expectations in my marriage because I just always felt like I had to be the woman of the house. I just had to do everything. Well, that's not okay. And that's why I'm burnt out because I've been doing, and not expecting anything of my spouse or my partner. There's been studies that show like some Black men feel like they can't date Black women because they're too independent and they feel like they can't do anything for them. They're looking for someone who they feel like they can do things for. And then a lot of Black women say they choose to be single because they feel like they're very independent. And so they're like, oh, I don't need a man for anything. So I'm good. I don't even need to be in a relationship. I don't want to be married. And that's all cool. The underlying theme is that most Black women aren't even realizing the impact of not having expectations of your partner. There's this idea of what a woman should do in a relationship or, what a man should do. Those discourses impact the satisfaction in relationship.
Is there any research that supports that therapy can help with overcoming some of these mental struggles?
Oh my God, yes. This is why it's important that all therapists are culturally sensitive. I'm hoping that with my research, it'll help at least understand the way Black women are entering their relationships. And so, like for couples therapists, as like myself, I'd be able to see, okay, so most women aren't even coming in with expectations or they feel like they have to do these certain things. How could we have a conversation around, what does it mean for you to be a Black woman? And what are some things that are very important to you as your identity as a Black woman? And even if you look at little Black girls, even if you have those children in therapy, therapists who know of the strong Black woman stereotype can even start to help them have a conversation around this at an early age so that you don't wait till they're like 20 or 30 and they're heavily impacted by the stereotype. Because, like I said, this starts at a very young age. We learn the way we should be as Black women from our families. The way I do therapy is more around creating new stories for people and individuals in their lives. The conversation is more about experience you want to live. How do you want your life to be? And how can we talk about getting there?
What do you think that we can do as a community to help the next generation of young women? Like you spoke a little bit about how you try to raise your baby and like making sure she doesn't get any complexes, but just as a community, what can we do to help the next generation?
Personally, I think that it's amazing some of the things we're able to do, change the way that we think and the way we perceive the way we should be. At a very like basic level, having more conversations with our children, with ourselves about, what is this life that I'm creating? Really doing emotional well-being checks on yourself, like being able to process and reflect on just your day. Like at the end of the day, okay, like, so what did I do today that was way too much? Was I doing this for myself? Was I doing this for someone else? It's okay to be helpful and do things for people, but you also have to take a step back and see how it's impacting you and what ways is it impacting you. And some of these experiences are very traumatizing, especially when you got too much on your plate and you're trying to do too much to make sure you keep up this facade of being strong and being not vulnerable and just continue to press forward. People always say, we're going to get it done. So I would say like just changing the way that we think and believe about what it means to be like a successful Black woman. That doesn't have to look like you struggling. That's not how it has to look.
Mm-hmm. So, how has what you've learned thus far affected the way that you interact with others?
Um, I would say things like, what can you do differently about the way that you're thinking about this thing? Or I'll just say to my friend, sometimes I have some friends like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be at that event. You know that, right? Like, it might be great. It might be ever changing, but like, how much time have you made for yourself this week? How much time have you made for yourself this month? Even people with children, your mother, that's great. But you were an individual before you became a mother. You can't lose yourself in that because your kids are going to grow up and they're going to flourish and be great, but you also have to set aside time for yourself. And that's the only way you're going to be able to keep stable and remain emotionally healthy because you have to have time for yourself. You have to make time for yourself. That's very important. And that the time for yourself is very useful, not just like, oh, I made time for myself. I watched a movie. Okay, so in what? I try to encourage people. It's very important to work out. That really impacts your emotional well-being. That can be time alone for yourself. You really do clear your mind. You zone out into like what you're doing. So I try to do little things without preaching, making somebody feel like I know everything because I don't.
Mm-hmm.
One person at a time.
Who inspires you?
I'd probably say my daughter. She has been life-changing for me. I know that she's like my number one inspiration.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna ask you anyway. So what pushes you and gets you through tough days when you're like, you know what, this Ph.D, baby, I don't know how I ended up here, but what really pushes you to get through?
It's really her. I've been in school her whole life, my whole life. I really need to get this done. I really want to be able to like, do other things. I know she always sees me as like mommy in school. However, I want her to experience another side too. And also for my family, my family don't know what a PhD is. Most of them just learned about this from me doing this. Just to be able to like give that back to them to help them understand I'm actually taking something I'm very passionate about and researching it and like put it out there to help the community. And so like that pushes me, my daughter, my family, and the Black community.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for people who are thinking about higher education?
Most people are like, oh, I'm too old, or I haven't been to school in like forever. You can't get the time back. So you might as well just start now. Start whenever you can. And even if you 50, 60, just not finishing your PhD, at least you did it for you. And I'm so big on doing things for you. That's really important to me. For people who think about going into higher education, there's definitely a lot of setbacks, but if you really work hard and it's something you're truly passionate about, we can all do that.
So what do you do for your mental and physical health?
For mental health, I go to therapy. As a therapist, therapists need therapy too. I work out all the time and I take time for myself. I always, like I said, I always take a step back and be like, did I do anything for me this week? And then I travel. Traveling is therapy for me. And so I try to make sure me and my daughter are able to take a trip once a year. Even myself, smaller trips, it's definitely therapy for me.
And I have one last question. What is one thing that you do or you use every day?
Well, I use the Bible app every day. I get my verse of the day, and sometimes I journal. I reflect on those things. But if you said one thing is that I gotta open my Bible app every day. I gotta get my word, my scripture once a day, and that's something I'm very consistent with.
Her research is so dope, right? Well, if you want to connect with her, the best way is via LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you want to connect with me, I can be reached at The Research Her on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, I have one ask of you. Please go to The Research Her and add your name to the emailing list. TheResearchHer.com. And that's it. I holla.